Tim Lawton had a very interesting exchange with Suella Braverman on the 22nd of November last year. So it's interesting that it's Tim Lawton who leads the campaign against Suella Braverman in the backbenches to say how stupid she's been, how ridiculous the Home Office has become, what an embarrassment this is for the Conservative government, and indeed for our country. What an embarrassment, because once again, Suella Braverman demonstrates that she and her department are too lazy to have done the proper inspections, to have crossed their T's, to have dotted their I's, and to have got everything right. They're too obsessed with their rhetoric to have actually bothered looking at the detail. Listen to the exchange between Tim Lawton, who asks Suella Braverman how a potential refugee, would get from Africa to the UK where he has relatives. And she concedes that he would have to cross the channel in a small boat. But that once he got to the other side, once he got to the British side of the water, he could claim asylum, and that would legitimise him. This is something she now claims, because of the late November Nationality and Border Act, would make him an illegal migrant. The irony is just absurd. In basically 1 week, she's turned somebody from a legitimate migrant, a legitimate asylum seeker, to an illegitimate traveller, simply because she signed a piece of paper and because she got the king to sign it as well. This is a bad law, and this is nonsense, legality. This is playing around with words, and simply because we define something as illegal doesn't make it illegal. It's not illegal under international law until we revise the 1951 Refugee Convention. As for the European Court of Human Rights, well, unfortunately, we are part of the European continent. We are part of that confederation, even if we've gone through a Brexit. But people are quite right. America is not part of that. Australia is not part of that. They get on perfectly well. But having been part of the European Court of Human Rights system, it becomes very different when we leave it, because we then join Russia and Belarus. But let's have a look at what Tim Lawton said, and then we'll get on to his comments about the Bibi Stockholm and the disease that Suella Braverman has managed to allow there. It's like Cruella de Vil unleashing her evil. Well, actually, not even Cruella de Vil. It's like Dracula. I remember there was a very good film in about 1973 called The Satanic Rites of Dracula. Or was it? Yeah, I think it was The Satanic Rites of Dracula. There we are. There was also Dracula 72. There were some very good Dracula films in the early 70s. I remember creeping out to the cinema when I was far too young to go.
From an East African country escaping a war zone and religious persecution. And I have a sibling legally in the United Kingdom at the moment. What is a safe and legal route for me to come to the United Kingdom?
Well, we have... you're fleeing which country, sorry?
Any African country.
Any African country. Well...
Could be any continent, but let's say any African country. I don't want to name one because then their Prime Minister might have a go at me for demonising their population. So let's just theoretically talk about an African country which is going through a period of turbulence and which is persecuting its citizens, including an innocent 16-year-old like me.
Well, we have an asylum system, and people can put in applications for asylum.
How would I do that?
Well, you can do it through the safe and legal routes that we have. We have offered 390,000 places to people seeking safety from various countries around the world.
I'm not Syrian, I'm not Afghan, I'm not Ukrainian, not any of those specific schemes. The Dub scheme is historic. What scheme's open to me?
Well, if you are able to get to the UK, you are able to put in an application for asylum.
But I would only enter the UK illegally then, wouldn't I?
Well, that would, if you put in your application for asylum upon arrival, that would be the process that you enter.
How could I arrive in the UK if I didn't have permission to get onto an aircraft legally to arrive in the UK?
Let me just invite other colleagues if there's anything they want to add.
I mean, you could engage with UNHCR. I mean, depending which country you're from, you could engage with UNHCR, and that would be a way of getting leave to enter the UK in order to put in an asylum claim. But I accept that there are some countries where that would not be possible.
I think the point is that there's a shortage of safe and legal routes other than for specific groups of people.
So I'm not greatly surprised that it's Tim Lawton who leads the charge against Suella Braverman here in response to the Legionella bacteria found on the Bibi Stockholm barge. He says this is deeply troubling and rapidly turning into a farce that the Home Office can ill afford. Given the importance of the project, it was important that every risk assessment was performed before the people were put on the barge. Given the delays, there were serious questions as to why they were not done, and what comeback there is on the contractors or whoever is responsible for signing it off for habitation. So Lord Reid has said the whole thing. The department is not fit for purpose. He was Home Secretary in 2006, and he's renewed calls for the department to be split up. And this whole thing has taken place on a day when we learn that there's been 100,000 migrants crossing the Channel. We also learned from the migrants who were put on the Bibi Stockholm that some of them were not Channel crossers. Some of them had come to the UK on planes. So the whole thing is so utterly confused. And we were told that the migrants on the Bibi Stockholm were those people whose applications had already progressed some way. So again, it makes a nonsense for Lee Anderson to turn around and talk about them being illegal migrants, and if they don't like what they've got, then they can go back to France, or F off back to France, whatever. The whole thing, Robert Jenrick, Lee Anderson, Suella Braverman, it just comes across as nasty. But here's an interesting point. In a few years' time, what's to stop these migrants, when they are settled in the UK, or those who perhaps are not settled in the UK, who go back elsewhere, what's to stop them raising the money and taking a series of serious legal cases against the Home Office and against the government for the treatment they have received, for the exposure that they were put under to disease because of the way that they have been kept? Because it's almost certain that there will be legal consequences. This whole business has not been thought through. It is dominated by rhetoric and an unrealistic approach. Now, I personally think that we should find a way to curb migration, but I think that's something that we should be doing on a European-wide approach. And without that, I don't think there's the slightest chance of success. And most European countries are beginning to feel the pinch, and it's only going to take a drive from Niger to make this migrant flow almost impossible for Europe to tolerate. I predict there will be a call for a convention to challenge the 1951 Refugee Convention and to redefine it. And again, I predict that because of the stupidity, the pig-headedness and the arrogance of Suella Braverman and her predecessor, Priti Patel, and indeed everybody in the Home Office since Theresa May's hostile environment. Because of that, we're going to be playing catch-up when we could, in fact, have been leading the debate. How utterly stupid, and what an opportunity missed.